Because if we talk about 17 billion shillings, we'd have 5 to 8 modern level 5 hospitals. We would upgrade sub-county hospitals with the ICU units. We are able to tarmac 150 to 300 kilometers of tarmac road, depending on the standards. We are able to build 200 to 300 new schools or modernize existing ones with classrooms, labs, and ICT centers. When we talk about water, we are able to provide clean water to millions of people through boreholes, dams, and pipeline. You talk about energy, we can connect hundreds of thousands of homes to electricity and invest in renewable energy projects like solar. You can go on and on. We talk about farmers, support millions of farmers with subsidies, fertilizer seeds, build storage facilities to reduce post-harvest losses, and fund irrigation schemes that transform dry areas into productive land. You can go on and on. 17 billion shillings. We've not talked about 50 billion Hustler Fund. We've not talked about Nyota Fund. Now think about bringing all these billions to question up to around 500B. What could that do to Kenya?
It's necessary for us to ask those questions because there has to be a connect with reality at some point. And this is not even being political, it's just being basic. That if you say a country has the ability to use its own resources and then actually be able to create more with the ones that you already have. And if that is not happening repeatedly, you cannot be in a state where you, number one, don't interrogate or are not involved in the process to overturn such activity. And that's what we're talking about today. And I won't lie, I love the crowds that I'm seeing in whereby you want to imagine that those crowds are actually yearning for a change about some of the things that we speak of today. But you know what? It is absolutely useless if that inertia doesn't translate to you going to an office, registering to vote, and then on the second Tuesday of August 2027 actually coming out and voting. If you do not, guess what? You've wasted Vihiga, you've wasted Bungoma, you've wasted Kisumu, you've wasted Nakuru, you've wasted Mombasa, and you will waste the other venues where you will go.
And you've wasted productivity.
You've missed a vital step. You need to get your voter's card. But at the end of the day, possibly 90% of those who will be on the ballot box will be nominated by the political party. And what happened in 2022 is that some 8 million voters who were eligible did not take part. And the reason they didn't, I imagine, I guess ID issues and all, were they were not interested in the offering. And this is because the political parties are not able to give us leaders we believe in. So beyond that voter's card is the political party.
But political parties are not political parties in Kenya.
If you get poor nominees, if the biggest gangster, highway robber, fighting rape, murder charges,
corruption cartel number one,
is your nominated choice, and they are competing with similar. You know how there's a particular ballot that I scratched. I put X0 because I was like, neither of these will deliver for me. So it is not just the voter's card. That's the first step. If we don't tackle political parties, and how do you tackle political parties? I think we have to register.
I think that we need to be aware. We need to be aware.
Not just aware.
No. We need to be aware of the fact that political parties in this country are not being used for the original idea for which political parties were meant. Political parties are just political vehicles so that you can nominate Dennis today. And if I went to your party and you didn't give me a nomination, guess what? I will go to the registrar tomorrow and I will have Ndu's Peacock Party. And by the end of the day, I could have 1,000 agents in my party.
Other peacocks.
It has nothing. Thank you. It has nothing to do with ideological drive.
True.
And if it did and followed the drive of ideology, then these people that you speak about, which would be on the menu for which you would look and say, you know what, I would actually vote for this person, or this person feels the need. You know why? The people who are sure of the position are not joining those political parties. They are not. Why do we have the independent? because two things happen. Number one, you seek nomination, you don't get it. Number two, the ideology that you would fight for or live for through your leadership is not offered by that political party.
Yeah, but that's the same argument.
So it's like saying, it's like saying, go to a political party, but that political party is not vested in ideology.
In 1990s, prior to the constitution reform process, we didn't have public participation, and we didn't have public participation and budget monitoring. We didn't have social audit. We didn't have citizens calling to talk about accountability. So it doesn't mean just because it's not happening, it can't happen. The point I'm making is that our constitution process has brought us thus far. We have entered into government as citizens. We are holding these guys into account. But the weakest link is that assembly. The policies, by the way, are being enacted. That's why we have Vision 2030. Because government fears enough to pass a balanced budget. By the way, those budgets are approved by the Controller of Budget because they comply. But then, once they comply and they are out of the public participation space and they go to the legislature, that's where they bribe. That is where brown envelopes are taken.
These individuals who you're talking about, who guess what? They belong to these political parties.
And you see, that's the point.
And
so I'm saying our next line of fighting corruption is where politics starts.
And I think it's therefore upon us to look at the kind of political parties we have and the kind of offerings they bring forth, right? Individuals who are in these political parties. Because as Wananchi as well, like you said, you looked at a ballot paper and you put an X because there was no one right there who you would identify with because no one fit the bill.
Exactly.
Therefore, we then go back to agencies that we have put in place to ensure that in one way or the other, individuals who show up, who end up at the ballot, are clean individuals. Here we talk about NCIC, EACC, ODPP.
Dennis, don't talk about NCIC. They're out of them. Those ones exited.
All right.
Talk about the rest.
Let's talk about
NCIC,
the rest.
Let them rest.
But you see, the reason why we're even putting them to rest is because they have let us down. They know what they're supposed to do. They choose not to do it.
Yes.
So therefore, as one inch, we look at the office of the Register of Political Parties and the regulations that are there even in law. Why is it that Register of Political Parties today, IEBC, are silent when we see all these politicians, including the president, breaking the law simply because they have done that before? Nothing has been done with them. In retrospect, as Wananchi as well, we need to tell these individuals, we voted you in.
Dennis, let's be honest here. IBC, EACC produced a list of ineligibles.
Yes.
IBC produced regulations to bar those individuals, and they took it to Parliament. This issue, I think, even ended up in court, and the ruling was you can't be barred until you have exhausted all your legal.
All the legal, yes.
Provisions.
That is Article 90 of the Constitution,
legal provisions means, and we've been in court on the CDF, we have not exhausted even after 10 years because we have gone all the way to the Supreme Court and now we are back to the High Court. So we are caught in a cat and mouse game of how do you bar these aspirants who are not eligible. The legal provisions, Parliament has no incentive to do it. That's why they thwarted. They will not.
Yes.
They're the ones who diluted the Elections Act. They're the ones who diluted all the
Ethics Act, Chapter 6.
The Ethics Act as well, and the enforcement. So we need to recognize lessons from Singapore. Before I was interrupted by Ndu, I was taking us to Singapore.
No, we don't.
And what I wanted to say is lessons from Singapore, because they are documented. You can't fight corruption if the top leadership is corrupt. You can't fight corruption if the police, the investigating bodies, are corrupt. You can't fight corruption if the anti-corruption agencies are confused and overlapping.
Don't have power to
So
bite.
we do not have the conditions for fighting corruption. That means we need to find spaces to fight. Even during Moi's time, we didn't have the space to fight corruption. We didn't even have the space to overthrow an authoritarian government, but we found those gaps. So for me, I'm saying, what are these spaces that we can use to continue our constitutional agenda? Because despite Moi, we were able to enact a constitution